Hi, welcome to our podcast today. Welcome to C-Suite Strategy, Elevate Your Move, Scale Beyond. And our topic of discussion today is leadership in the virtual world. Are you ready for the challenge? Your go-to podcast on tech, cybersecurity, strategy, and growth. I am your host, Prem Kumar today, and we will explore how virtual world is changing the way we do work today. A special welcome to all tuned into Power of Knowing Forum's weekly podcast, episode 246 today on LinkedIn Live. We have the honor of having Mr. Sarabjeet Sachar, founder and CEO, Aspirations, and career development and leadership coach. Let's welcome our esteemed speaker onto the podcast event and let's dive into the topic.
Thank you.
Sir,
Thank you. Thank you, Prem. Thank you very
welcome.
much for this warm welcome and excited. And I really compliment you on the kind of, as I was mentioning, the kind of commitment and discipline that you show, especially, doing 246 episodes is, I must congratulate you on that. And so much of value you are adding through the Power of Knowing Forum, helping so many people. Excellent. Congrats. And
Thank you, sir.
I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you for that, sir. Thank you for being on the show for the second time this in our podcast. Let's dive into the topic, sir. What does leadership mean in the real world where teams just a thumbnail away, sir?
Yeah, interesting. So for me, leadership has always been like parenting. I always like to compare it to parenting. How you parent your child. Similarly, as leaders, we also parent our teams. That means you have to, like how you have an attachment with the child and you serve the child till the time the child grows up and children become big. You are always serving the children. Similarly, in leadership also. So we might be a kind of thumbnail away. That is something which is the major change that has happened. But at the same time, there are what I have noticed is in our style of functioning, there are three things that help us. One is a clearly defined objective and goal in a virtual environment. Define that clearly so that the teams are very clear because they are not visible. It's a virtual world. And unlike in the physical world where you are working from office, here you have given them something as a direction which they have to start owning. So if there is no definition of what you're expecting out of them, what are the goals and what are the objectives, then it becomes a challenge. As you rightly put it, you are just a thumbnail away. Uh, the second point is for leaders to be very, very empathetic. We all know empathy plays a great role. And when we are empathetic as leaders, especially, when you are away from the people, uh, you have to be empathetic and sensitive to know what is happening on the opposite person's life also, personally. So that's the second piece. And the third and the most important thing for leaders to manage a virtual world when you are just a thumbnail away is develop trust. Trust in the workplace, trust in the team, and also reflect trust for the team so that they can trust you. Without trust, a virtual team can never, anyway, it cannot work, but in a virtual environment, you just cannot function. So there are these three elements clearly defining the objectives and the goal. Second, being empathetic, very empathetic. And third, most important, having trust. These are the three things that we need to take care.
Thank you for that, sir. I think the very important 3 points that we need to look at now, sir. Today, what we see is challenges in the virtual environment where leaders must overcome. What is that one challenge the virtual leaders should overcome to build a culture, and how do we tackle it, sir? Build a team culture.
Okay, so in my experience, whether I'm coaching or whether I'm leading teams myself, when it comes to virtually, the biggest challenge, the number one challenge, according to me, is building an emotional bond with the team. Building an emotional bond in a digital environment is quite a challenge because it is a little bit more, a tad bit easier when you are in office, in a face to face, to build an emotional bond because there are so many things that are visible, the body language, etc. there are signs that you can pick up. But when it's only virtual and you're meeting only in between the meetings, what happens in between the meetings is more important, or rather equally important, as to what happens in the meetings, because these people, all of them, your if it is a hybrid or a complete virtual team, they are all working from their home, from their not from their workplace. So everybody works in a different kind of constraint, limitations. So how do you build an emotional bond? That is something which is the number one challenge for any leader. Now, what I have learned and how I have been able to, means we might not be perfect and we might not be there, but the way I believe we have developed our emotional bond with our teams are again three things. One is know your team members. Very essential, because the moment you are working from home or from a virtual setup, we sometimes it's a tendency to tend to forget that they also have people attached at home to them. It is also somebody having a small child, a 3-year-old baby, somebody having an ailing mother, somebody having maybe, see, everybody doesn't have rooms to sit, everybody is operating out of home. So there will be spaces which are very limited. There will be time slots which are only suitable for a meeting. So many variables come up. Now, these are all challenges which one has to take care of. So, know the team members. I know my team members, all of them. I know what their families are, what they are doing. So, when I'm talking to my team members, I keep that in mind that this individual has a ailing mother, somebody else has a small baby. All those things make a lot of difference. Second, very important in a virtual world is listening, and genuinely listening. By listening, I mean uh, making the other person genuinely feel heard. That's when you really say that I'm listening to you. Otherwise, you're just kind of thinking of what I should say next. Listening is the second quality. First is knowing the team. And third, very important, because you are not in front of the team, regular check ins. So have a system where you do regular check ins, and check ins one to one. If it's a very large team, the team leaders have to do one to one check ins. But in a one to one check in setup, you listen to their challenges and then take immediate action, so that you are again continuing to build that emotional bond, which is the biggest challenge. So these three things I have found are extremely effective.
Sir, very important points. I completely am in line with those pointers, that because I've been a person who has been the person who looks at sitting in the office and working, because the connect is different, the talks are different. I always had a challenge when during the COVID period, is that I call a person to get one work done. That guy is another call, is in a remote call, and he says he'll call me back. By the time I've got into another call, so he calls me back. I don't have time because I'm in another call. So it so happens that we are thinking that he's busy and he's ignoring my call. Kind of that kind of a thing comes up. But when you are at the front of each other, you just walk in. He's in a call. He says, just walk into my cabin, or I drop him a note and say, do this, and I can come out, right? And that way I can also take him for a cup of coffee and talk on some things which are very personal, rather than we being on calls and not talking, which are personal too, right? So these are very important pointers that I understand from what you are saying. How do we ensure physiological safety for a remote team is in a high pressure environment? Because that's what we are talking about, right? Pressure is there. I
Yeah.
am there in another call, you are there in another call, but we are not able to reach. There's a fire happening and we have to solve both. But you are on constant calls, I am on constant calls when it is remote. How do we handle those kind of situations?
So there is something called as a psychological safety the team should feel in an environment, whether it's online or offline in office, right? But in a virtual environment, it gets a little more difficult. So again, my favorite example is of parenting. Suppose your child. How do you develop a bond with your children? They could be big, they could have been married, but there has to be certain bond, and your children should feel very safe to come to the parent and feel very secured. How does that happen? That's because you've really kind of given them values. You have defined certain things. the rules they live by. And as they grow old, they form their own rules. But at the same time, they have at the back of the mind that my parent is there, my father is there, mother is there to fall back upon. So that psychological safety which we are talking about, what we develop as a parent for our children, the same thing we got to develop for our teams. And that comes, again, I would say three key things. One is clearly defining the goals and the objectives. If you have defined the goals and the objectives for the team, what happens is when they know what direction to take, and when they are in that direction, and suppose there is a deviation for whatever be the reason, they would feel safe to come to you because they know that this is a company or a leader's defined goal which is linked and aligned to the company's mission. So there is no problem in me as a team member talking to my leader because it has been defined. So without this definition of what the goal and the objective is, they will not feel safe because they might not know whether it is appropriate for me to raise my hand and say, this is the challenge I'm facing, because it should be relevant. That's one. Second is absolute genuine empathy. I just can't emphasize, if you are empathetic, it is very essential. To give you an example, in a virtual world, what happens? Assuming I'm very upset with a team member, or any leader is upset with a team member, and I start shouting in the on the call, in a video call. In office and in virtual, there is a difference. When you're shouting at a team member, or you just lose your patience or get angry for whatever be the reason, which is the learning for leaders, when you're shouting, it is not only that team member who's getting affected. The team member is sitting with family members also. Because as I
Yeah.
said, there is a lot of constraint. Now, once you start shouting, or once you start getting angry, or maybe put down a person in a virtual meet as a team, it could be that the person is getting that shameful feeling in even in front of the family members. Just imagine what is the kind of plight of that team member. So empathy is so important that you first understand as a leader, and then only take your steps, whether it is asking for performance or whatever. But without empathy, you cannot. That's the second piece. Third, again, most important, as I always say, trust. And trust is of two kinds, So when you're talking of psychological safety, where I as a team member can talk to you about anything to a leader, one, I should trust you on the basis of your competency, which is still easy because on the basis of competency and abilities and skills, it's easy. But emotional trust is very essential. I should feel very safe that if I talk to you, it will be heard genuinely and it will be taken in the right spirit. So I'll talk to you, I'll get a solution for that. So I feel very safe. Now, that part is something which is very important. And for that, what I follow is be authentic and vulnerable also. Reflect your vulnerability. I had a tough phase in my personal life, very, very tough phase, personal challenge for almost a year or two. My teams knew about it. I didn't hide anything because we are all human. They also have the same challenge. Then they will feel that, okay, if my leader is also facing a challenge and is vulnerable, there's nothing wrong in me sharing that, okay, this is the challenge I'm also facing, perhaps in the personal life or whatever. So that's how you start developing that psychological safety. So three things: clearly defined goals, genuine empathy, and trust. Extremely important.
Yeah, again, three important pointers that are required. Sir, but what I've seen in organizations is they start looking at micromanagement, right? Because we are on virtual environments. Now, in a virtual era, is micromanagement becoming a silent killer of innovation, sir?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Now, micromanagement is a thing which in virtual teams really kind of can kill the spirit of the team. Let's imagine that, in your city, Prem, or anybody's city, there are no traffic lights on the traffic junction. Let's imagine. No traffic lights on any traffic junction, and instead of that, there is a policeman, the traffic policeman, manually doing it at every junction. No traffic lights. What will happen? That individual policeman has to monitor and guide every vehicle, and there are hundreds of vehicles around him. Chaos. It's without that system of having the signal when the red, yellow, and green light goes on, and when we know as drivers that we have to either stop or go, then the support of the policeman is okay. But otherwise, if there is no signal, the guy will go mad
Right. Yeah.
maneuvering. Same thing happens in micromanagement. Exactly the same thing if there is no system at all. In fact, there's a friend of mine who I visited, and this is real. He had just means I visited. He had called us home for dinner, and
Hmm.
we went, my wife and I. And I saw that out of the 3-4 hours that we were there in the evening, almost for about 1.5 hours, he was on his mobile. I said, "What happened?" He said, "We've just moved to the virtual hybrid thing." So I said, "So he said, no, but we have just moved and I need to see whether the team is doing correctly or no." I said, "Yeah, it is 7:30 in the evening. You are looking at your mobile for everything." So he's saying, "No, I'm checking the emails."
Hmm.
Now, every email, if you're going to check and start micromanaging just because of the transition, and this is very normal, it happens. It happened to us also. So, initially, when micromanaging you start doing, your team is really stopping that. So, I just jokingly told him, I said, "Does your wife really have a relationship with you if you're going to be so much on the mobile? You're just going to remain on the mobile. What will your wife and your relationship happen?" So, he really was taken aback. I said, "Boss, you got to have systems. You can't be on your mobile looking at every email and all that." So, again, here I would say three things that help going away from that micromanagement tendency. One, what we have done, and I wouldn't say we have been perfect, but we are moving there, and to a great extent we have successfully done it. Outcome based management. Completely say outcome based. That means it has to be not really the activity that you're doing and monitoring that what time you log in and what time you are calling and what how many reports have you submitted. All that is fine. That should also be there. But the focus has to be on outcomes, the impact. That is something which is essential. Second, what we have implemented is a daily planning sheet. And in that daily planning sheet, we help our teams prioritize their activities because you are working virtually, so it's A, B, C, D, E. A is the most important task, B is the next one, C is the priority, third priority. If it is done on that day, it's okay. If it is not done, it can move to the next day. D is delegate, and E is eliminate that activity. So if you have a ABC classification, we have followed that, and the teams share it on a Google Doc every day after the weekly plan. They also focus on the priority tasks. So we become outcome oriented. That's one. And their activity also is more on the most important tasks. We know the 80-20 rule. 80% of the things are done only with the 20% of the tasks. So we're trying to help the teams say, okay, only focus on these 20% and you're done. And till the time the team is doing it, you don't have to micromanage. You just see their sheet. If there is any comment, you put it on that. And the third thing that we have done to avoid this micromanagement, and it's in process very advanced, we have created playbooks. We have got checklists for everything. The recruitment team has a checklist saying that how do you assess candidates. The coaching team, our career services coaching team, has a checklist. Every step that you are talking to the client who you're coaching, everything there is a checklist. So if the checklist is being followed and tick marked, things are going fine. If it is not, obviously you can talk, you can meet, but the systems help you be at ease as a leader, unnecessarily just micromanaging, just like the traffic police, because innovation is not really coming out of chaos and out of traffic noise. It will come only when you are
And a
literally
calm.
in that system. That is something which will happen. So just to end it with means you literally got to leave that driver's seat and let the team take the wheel. That's how you will stop micromanaging. That kind of a mindset.
I take this point, sir. When I was part of the delivery of a large project,
Ah,
we used to transition between implementation and sustenance. So I have to transition because I did the implementation. I had to transition to the sustenance. So what we used to do is we were the drivers, as you rightly said. I was the driving, sitting at the driving seat. Now I said back, I went back and said, "You are going to take up and look at these operations. You'll do it, and I will monitor." So we put the operations team in front. That's
ah,
how the transition happened,
ah.
and we looked at each pointer and we said, "This is where we did this way. You can look at this pointer, tweak it, but make it effective." So that kind of a hand holding is what we were doing when we wanted the other teams to take over, right? And that's predominantly what we do as a transition management pointer. Now,
Fabulous.
how can we feel, or can be empathy felt on a screen, and how You make your team feel seen in Zoom calls, because Zoom rooms are nowadays 20, 30 people, right?
Yeah,
And how do I make my presence felt? Is there a possibility that we look at, while you may not be even given the opportunity to talk, but your presence or your pointers, some of the questions that you wanted to put, how do you take that as your pointers, sir?
sure, sure. So again, being empathetic over the screen is something which people feel is very difficult. But again, I'll go back to the example of parenting. So,
Mm.
suppose your daughter is married at somebody else's house, and now as a parent, you really don't need any medium, just a phone call. And the silence on the other side will tell you a lot about how the state of mind of the daughter is, what's happening in her life. So, when you are empathetic as a parent
Mm.
to your daughter and you have understood that yes, there is some challenge that she's facing, should we talk? Similarly, with the teams also, when you are in a virtual world, when you are just talking through screens, empathy obviously can be transited. Absolutely done. Because it's basically, my intent as a parent is to take care of my child, my daughter. Suppose that's my intent, same thing. So the key thing is that a clear intention of the leadership team has to be to service or serve the team. That means that servant leadership, which is what I call, is something which I did. Like yesterday only, we had a coaching session, and because of this announcement yesterday, that operation which happened,
Yeah.
suddenly we had a coaching session scheduled in the morning, 10 o'clock. And there's a team member of mine, she's got a small child, so she was supposed to join me. I immediately in the morning, only 7:30, I sent her a message proactively on my own that this has, I've just read this. Please do not attend the coaching session. She did not ask for it because she's based in Jammu. And if
Okay.
she's in Jammu and it's at the border, I need that empathetic attitude, and it's human. Means there's nothing great about it. No book has to teach you that. So
True.
because it's a virtual world, I know, and I really don't know in Jammu what must be happening if they have announced something like this, the operation that happened Sindoor.
Yeah.
So I just told her that don't attend. But out of that also fine, means it was her thing. She said, no, sir, I will attend. Things are okay. But point is that you got to be empathetic towards your team member to ensure that empathy can be transferred even through a screen. It doesn't, your physical presence is not required. It's that intent of the leader, right? So that is something which is important. Many times what happens, people confuse sympathy with empathy. Now,
Yeah.
sympathy, suppose you have a team member who's just having a separation in their relationship, for example, and the person comes and is like in tears, very tired, exhausted, and is sharing that with you as a leader. And she says that, today was a very tough day, whole day at the court and everything. Now, just at that point in time, suppose you say, okay, here's a sandwich. Just you must not have had
Mm.
anything. That is sympathy.
Yeah.
But empathy would be listening. That's it. Nothing else. Listening to what the person is just saying and just saying, I understand. I really understand what you are going through. That's it. That person at that moment requires only that being heard to throw open her heart. It and the sandwich which I'm talking about is a physical thing which you can do only in a physical world. But empathy does not require any medium. It's only your presence. You really don't need proximity. Just don't need proximity. You're present there, that's enough as a leader. So that empathy over the screen which we are talking about is again the intent of the leader. So we are talking of some things which are very, very human, nothing so great about it, and you can do that. In fact, um, to give you an example, empathy over the screen is something like you have a curtain drawn and there's a lamp behind that. Now the lamp is there and it's dark, but the lamp is switched on and the light is coming. You can't see the lamp, but the light is still coming through the curtain. That empathy is that light, which we as leaders got to ensure that we have that intent to do it. It's something which is absolutely a must. In fact, um, there is somebody who I was coaching, one of our clients, and he told me something very interesting. I must share that with you. He said, I don't ask my teams to switch on the camera at all.
Mm.
It's been months. I said, okay, so you do it without the camera on. That means you're not seeing the teams. He said, no. And he also operates successfully a business which is virtual. So I said, how do you manage that? He said, one thing I made it as a rule that whenever I start my meeting, one question I will ask them. What is that question? I asked. He said, tell me one thing that is running on your mind which is non work. And the team members just open up. Yesterday was
Mm.
my mother. She had to be rushed to a hospital. Somebody says, my husband is traveling, so we had to shift to somebody else's place. Or somebody says, yeah, my son really achieved this and he got a certificate. Wow. So there is joy and sorrow that is being shared in the start of the meeting. And then as a leader, you get that information as a human being and then fine tune your approach in terms of the meetings. He said there's no need for the camera. I found it very interesting. And even in our teams, unless and there is a need, I don't tell them to switch on the camera. But empathy can be transferred through the screen. It does not require proximity or a physical presence to be done.
Very, very interesting, sir, because wherever I've been part of or the organizations that I've been part, it was mandatory that they should switch on the camera. And that is where we wanted to put a face to the person
Ah,
most of the time. And that's where we kept it. But what we said is if the call is happening after the working hours and you have to be part of a review call or something like that, it is not necessary that you should be part putting this camera after business hours. That's one mandate we had put. Now, coming into that kind of ritual or habit, what's one ritual or habit you create in your remote team that brought real transformations?
yeah. So, uh, rituals, like, rituals are very important, I believe, and more so in a virtual world. Because you know how a ritual like a morning walk, you just take a morning walk and what happens is it sets the rhythm for the day. Similarly, if you have a ritual in your company, it will help the teams deliver. That's very important. So what uh, we started doing as a ritual, which is successfully though, because you are away from the teams, we started this daily prioritization sheet of your activity. That means you're talking of the weekly plan being made, share it over the Google Docs. Again, that ABCD which I shared, do that so that you know that this is. So the point is that every day for that daily sheet, you are asking yourself, or the team is asking themselves, or I am asking them, what are the important activities that you will focus on today? That has to be answered clearly. So, frankly, if you ask me, with that prioritization and ABCD classification, we know that at the end of the day, the most important tasks would be done. Some of them might still not be done, can be carried forward, but then it helps you plan the next day. So, that ritual of prioritizing your activities in an ABCD classification so that you focus on the really that 80% 20% rule and focus on that 20% which is making the 80% of the impact. And if the other things don't get done, you can, it's okay. Some things you can delegate, and today with Chat GPT, you can delegate so much. Chat GPT is like your personal assistant, even if you don't have teams reporting into you, but you can still use Chat GPT as a personal assistant. And if you can do that, you're delegating. So this ritual of having a daily prioritization sheet over the Google Doc, every team member has to do it and plan the day according to the week. And from the week you pick up and plan your activity for the day. Absolutely fine. Direction is good. You can comment on that. So this ritual which we are following is like, I would say a 10-minute morning walk for the mind is much better than, hours of meeting and planning and all. Just 10-minute morning walk for the mind. That's the ritual.
Sir, I will take that point up because my day used to start with a small walk for about 30-35 minutes in a park in Bangalore. I go to Lalbagh, which most of the Bangaloreans know. It's a I think it is a 500-acre land
Huh.
where there's a big ground, and if you go one round, you'll cover about 4 kilometers or something like that. One round is that big.
Okay.
So what I took this from one of the books that I've been reading. A
Huh.
5 minute or a 10 minute walk in the
Huh.
morning can change a lot of things, in the entire day, because that's how you start the day with a fresh breathing energy, and you have a different level of energy when you do your morning walk, is what I understand. It is really helping me. That's a important point that I'll take. Sir, how do you measure success when you can't see your team's work?
Yeah. So, yeah, that is quite a common challenge most leaders would face. All of us face that. Again, I will go back to my favorite example of parenting. Assuming your child is studying abroad, I see many people's parents, they're saying our child is studying abroad and 18, 19, 20, and somebody has started just kind of graduating or post graduating. How do you measure the success of the child when the child is away? It's the same thing. What parameters will you use to assess the success of your child? There will be either the projects that they are handling, the choices that they are making, or what are the results, exam results. On these bases, you will start assessing that, okay, fine, I think things are good with my child. He's studying projects, choices, as well as the results. Similarly, when as leaders, we are looking at success, I would say to measure that, if you can make it outcome based, this is a very major shift. Just outcome based. For example, in our recruiting team, we have this. Uh, we brought in the activity based targets also. Besides, positions being closed for the recruiting team, we got the activity based targets also. What is that activity based target? That in a week, you got to ensure that so many profiles are shared with the client, and y number of interview calls have to be created. This has nothing to do with the closing of the position, but it's activity based, but it is outcome based, because this activity will lead to a closure of a position. So the team knows that I have to deliver this outcome. So when you have defined outcomes and then you work backwards and then support them with whatever you want to do, we have developed playbooks, checklists, so they get that support. But the focus has to be on outcomes. If you focus on outcomes instead of activities, this problem can be solved. Certainly.
Thank you for that, sir. How there is lot of talk around 24 bar connected remote environments and stuff like that. Now, how do we combat burnout in a 24 bar 7 connected remote environment?
Yeah, I know. The very thought that you are working from home can kind of create that anxiety in people, and that burnout can happen very fast because you really are on your own. So again, as a parent, suppose you have a child who's giving the IIT or IIM entrance exam. What would the child do? Continue to continue to study because there's so much of pressure that I have to clear this exam. Now, after a certain time, as a good parent, what do? We tell the child that, just relax, because this is something which is one exam. Life is going to give you bigger exams. You change the perspective of the child. If it is IIM and you want to crack it, it's fine. But don't just kind of ensure that you are just studying, studying, studying. Take a break. Even if it's your hobby of playing a guitar, singing a song, do that. Dancing, whatever you love, just take a break.
One point, sir. You said one important point. I'll tell something which is very close to my heart and it is personal for me as well. You
Ah,
said guitar. See, my daughter joined MBBS recently this year,
ah,
right? So after a long 1 year break, she cracked the exam and she got her medical seat.
okay.
In that counseling, what they said is, or the joining part on the college day, one pointer they said is, if you are having any cultural activities or hobbies that like guitar, this is one thing that they mentioned. Guitar, playing of instrument, especially guitar or drums or any hobby that you had, please continue, don't stop. That was the
Absolutely.
first point that they said when we went to the college to get her admission done. They said when a person does an extracurricular activity like playing an instrument or playing a sport, the concentration levels are much more when compared to not doing that. I just wanted to have that pointer while you are explaining. Sorry for that, to cut you short there. Go ahead, sir.
No, no, not at all. It's a very relevant thing. Very relevant. So that is precisely what I'm saying. It's extremely important to raise your creativity level and consciously develop a habit that, okay, take a break and do something. Means I love to dance. I can break into a dance anytime, anywhere, Prem. Anywhere. I love
Okay.
to dance. And I'm good at Bhangra dancing. So I still will just take a break. Even if it is alone, I will
Hmm.
dance. That's my passion. I love. Then after that, I become more creative because I've taken a break. I've kind of, my mind has got rest. So these are important things. So what we have done is, one is outcome based completely, so that there's no burnout, and have your prioritization ABCD. As I said, a daily sheet, I give a lot of importance to that, because you know what you have to do in that day. And when you end up your day being more productive because you have focused only on the important things, you feel more satisfied. So the chances of burnout are a little less. That's one. Second, we have fixed timings for meetings, means give them two options, because it's everybody's working from home. We have been considerate enough to see that, okay, not everybody's, but yeah, generally speaking, whoever is convenient, and we take the convenience of everybody and have fixed times for the meetings. Suppose you're meeting once in a day or twice in a day, have these broad time bands that, okay, within this time we'll meet, and not very longish meeting, but we'll meet, because that is essential. And third is, after 7 o'clock, tell the clients also. If it is coaching clients, say that we have WhatsApp group for the clients, we have Google Docs for the clients, everything. So after that, please send us a mail or send it over WhatsApp. But you can, unless and until it's very urgent. But at the same time, and even on Saturday, Sundays, when we take coaching clients also, people ask us that, will you coach us on a Saturday or Sunday? Sometimes we do, if it is urgent and if it is important and if it is really genuine, we do. But generally, Saturday, Sunday, no. But at the same time, the job ownership in the employees should be so much that on their own, proactively, they start taking the ownership. So I've seen our teams work after 7 also on their own, because they enjoy it. It's not because they're being told, but because there is a commitment that we have to excel and give client delight. It is ingrained in them, so they feel that, if I can do this. And sometimes our teams work even in the night. Somebody has a small baby, she will work at 10 o'clock in the night and send something to the client, which is okay, because as I said, it's outcome based. It is, maybe she's occupied even in the daytime with something else, but the work has been completed. So to not have a burnout is very essential, and in a virtual team, these kind of things. So having clearly outcome based, having fixed timings for meetings, and third, ensuring that you don't really tell everybody, the clients and the outside, that after 7 we will. Of course, if there is an important matter, we will take it up. We will talk also. But generally speaking, this is what has been the norm. It has worked well.
Sir, I think this is what I did when I was part of a large organization. We had projects across the region. I used to handle South India as a region, right?
Mm.
So I had to review most of the projects, and the project managers were either from Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Kerala as well. So my reviews used to be before 7:30. After that, we never had, and I used to frequently travel, so that I spend most of the time in those regions and make them. I used to tell the same thing. You have a deadline of a project to be delivered. Now, if you can prioritize and say there is a block here and I need help, that is one pointer that you can tell. If you are stuck, you need to tell me. You cannot say that I will hold till I try and then come back. You are stuck, you let us know, but meanwhile you try
Correct.
doing things. That's the first point. Second point is, every weekend when I am traveling and I am there in another state, I ensure I see these people, get together with their family and talk to us on a personal front, and know them on a personal front also. So
Absolutely.
that helped us a lot in terms of, now if you go talk to any of the family members, they know who I am.
Ah,
If I call, they don't have a problem, because we've called for birthdays, we've called for family functions, we've gone for project discussions, we've gone on outings as well, right? That's how we built the team. That's where I felt today also, after I've left that organization and it's been 7 years now. In this 7 years also,
they
people
still
still are connected,
connect.
right? So that's one thing I really felt when we spend most time understanding, listening to them, the bond increases, is what I understand. So that is very crucial for managing teams, is what I understand. Your take, sir.
Absolutely. No, no, absolutely. It is perfect what you're saying is, in fact, to the extent of knowing the team's family background, as I mentioned, what state they are in. And sometimes, like we were just doing a performance review, and one girl said that. My husband's also at home today because I had my performance review. I was a little bit nervous. I said, "Is he there right now?" He said, "Yeah." So I said, "Get him on the call." So we just said hello. We started chatting with the husband, and it was such a pleasant surprise for her.
Yeah.
Similarly, we did it with somebody else. Suppose somebody's at home, I said, "यार बुलाओ, कोई बात नहीं, मिलते हैं ना, आपकी
Yeah.
मम्मी को मिलते हैं, कैसी हैं आपकी मम्मी कैसी हैं जरा देखिए." Because virtual world, all these things are important, but it takes only the intent of the leader and the human aspect to manage all these things.
Yeah.
No book has to teach us this.
Sir, what leadership traits have become obsolete in the virtual first era, sir? Any traits that you think
Yeah,
have
yeah,
become?
absolutely, absolutely. Command and control. Absolutely out of the window. In fact, I had a friend of mine who visited us and we met, and he said, Sarabjeet, I'm having a challenge with my daughter. She's 21, but she never listens to us. Never. She's on her own trip only. Nothing she's listening to us. As a father, he was saying. So, because I believe leadership is like parenting. So, I learn a lot from parenting and then apply it to leadership. So, I said, what is your approach with your daughter? How do you do it? He said, I just tell her that, I'm your dad, I know more, and I have more experience. I said that is not going to work with the younger generation. And it's not
Yeah.
really true. It's not true that we know more.
Yeah.
Frankly, the younger generation knows much more, and that is
Much
why
more than that.
this reverse mentoring in companies where younger people are mentoring the elderly, especially on the AI and the technology front. We
Yeah.
don't know, so you got to say I don't know. Why not tell your daughter and have a chat with her and listen and change that entire game? So, as leaders, also, if we have that, what has become obsolete and gone completely out of the window is the command and control. You cannot have that. There is no way that you will be able to manage teams with this. And if you are in a virtual setup, no way. You will have people just kind of leaving, absolutely leaving your organization. In fact, what I have realized is that when you're talking about um, managing teams and ensuring that your leadership style doesn't get obsolete, what we have learned, especially from my children or maybe my friends' children, is that you got to learn to first of all from modern parenting, if I were to say, trust, absolute trust your child. You have to have that trust. Second, be very creative. And third, be very open to learning. Very, very important as a leader. So if you're open to learning, I'm saying that when it comes to reverse mentoring, I was talking to somebody, they said, we have implemented. I said, how are the seniors taking it? So there is some resistance, but at the same time, some people have taken it well because the way it is presented in the organization that I will actually mentor a senior and the knowledge they have about, and it'll make your life easier. And then you start complementing it as a team. So, having the trust, having creativity, and being open to learning, these are three things which are essential, which will ensure that you don't become obsolete. Because if you are having these three traits as a leader, you will continue to do well.
Sir, I take one more pointer here is what you said, command and control, right?
Ah,
Uh, there was one boss of mine who told control is not supposed to be there. It has
ah,
to be managed. Control is only for cattle.
well said. Control
So
is only
if you
for
have to have a control, you should have control on cattle, not on humans.
not on you.
Humans have to be managed, not controlled. So I took that very literally, and we never had a control on anything. We said we are going to manage the situation. We are going to see how this. We are going to come out of the situation. We will never had a pointer where we say we will control the situation. No, that was not the pointer my boss told us. Was you should not use the word control. Control is only for cattle, not for humans.
Absolutely. Prem, it's like very interesting what you said. Like, for example, again, a example of parenting, my favorite. Suppose your child is studying and she's a teenage daughter or a son, whatever, and you're in a virtual world, you can't see, but you want that control. So what you do, you want to know whether your son is studying in the night or no. So the door is shut, but the room's light is on. And as a parent, you feel, oh, just because the room's light is on, the son is studying. But is it true? Whether he's studying or not, just because the light is on, you're wanting to take that control to every activity of yours is to see that control that, oh, he should study. So, light is on. So, yeah, he's studying. Why? Trust. Trust your child. Similarly, trust your teams.
Yes, sir. If you there was as I told, I was part of the large organization, and here I had to manage remote teams. So I used to tell them, I am not there. Think
Ah,
that if I am there,
ah,
how will you do? And if I am not there, how will you do? I want the project to be completed in the timeline. Now, if
ah.
you are stuck, let me know. If you are doing good, give me an update saying that this is where we stand. I am not asking beyond that. How you do is your call. So that is the freedom we had, and touchwood, sir. And luckily, I had one of the best teams which I managed across India, Middle East, and Africa regions. Amazing
Fantastic.
projects we have done, and till date the team members have struggled. We've got literally told by the customer to get out of the premises and stuff like that. There were so many instances like that, but what we told the customer is, this is your project and you have given us an opportunity to do that project, so you should be in a position to help us navigate through these difficult situations and complete the projects. We seek your guidance, sir. That's how we used to talk, and we used to get the customer on our side and talk. That's where we had a great team till date, and the customers whom we were interacting are still in touch with me, sir. That's one great thing that I feel. Even where I was in the Middle East, the customer still talks to me, messages me, he talks to me on a regular basis. That's the trust we've built in, and we are very good friends now, sir.
And I must tell you, Prem, what you said is a great team. You are saying you're lucky, but I would say a great team is always representative of a good leader. So that's good, very good. You've been able to develop that.
Thank you, sir. Sir, what are three top skills every virtual leader should master to stay relevant today, sir?
So, in virtual teams, again, as I said, visibility is an issue. So, there are three top skills. One, according to me, is compassionate communication. Very, very important. Because if your communication is not compassionate, if you don't take into consideration the other person's point of view and really are compassionate about it and then communicate, you will find that it gets very difficult for you to communicate what you want to really communicate and form that bond or the connect with the team. That's one. Second is emotional intelligence. Very critical. Emotional intelligence, managing your own emotions. Because in a virtual world, when you know the teams are not visible at all, the tendency will be to really micromanage or get upset and feel very anxious. If you don't have emotional intelligence as a leader in a virtual team, it will get very difficult. And you got to listen to your own internal critic and ensure that you are able to manage your own emotions so that you are in sync with what the other person is saying. Only if you can manage your own emotions will you be able to manage the emotions of the other person. How does the person feel? Joyful, sorrow, whatever. And third is again, got to have that skill of focusing only on outcome based management. I'm insisting on this because only when you look at outcomes and change your mindset from the point of view that are activity based and what is the outcomes, what are the outcomes, is the outcome being delivered? If not, let's look at the system, let's improve the system, but focus on outcome. So the three things: compassionate communication, emotional intelligence, and outcome based management.
Uh, Again, I'll take one pointer on these three pointers that are there. Is my leader, one of the leader used to say is, listen to
Ah.
team members. That is half the problem will be solved if you completely listen. That too, you should start listening at a time when something is failed. That's where you'll get your teams heard better, because that's the point. They need support rather than getting into a tangle where you start saying you did not do this, or do you, what went wrong. Just want to understand if you can explain. That way of communication would be one good thing that you can build upon, is what I felt relevant to master and relevant to stay in
So
current
absolutely
situations.
right, Prem. So if you are compassionate, now you will be a good listener, and that comes with good listening. Only you start becoming compassionate, and that's important to communicate that.
So what happens when a trust is low in a remote team, and how do we rebuild that fast? Because we have that perception building, right? Once a mistake, second mistake, and we keep those two pointers as reference for the third mistake. If he makes a third mistake, we say, you did it twice, I've told you this again. So that kind of a thing. How
Trust.
do you build that and
So if
move
the
forward?
trust is low, it's something similar again. You're assuming your daughter or your son doesn't trust you. You got to have those kind of bondings with the children. Similarly with the teams, if the trust is low, the only solution. What would you do as a parent if the trust you find is low in your son or daughter? You will have a very open and a transparent communication, absolutely open, so that excuse me, you have an open communication, and I think everything can be sorted out if you are open to that. And assuming you find in your house that the children are more closer to the mother, involve the mother. These are all real life situations I'm talking about, which can be easily translated into leadership. So with the teams, if the trust is low, just have a one-to-one open communication immediately. If you find that there is lack of trust, and because of that maybe there is performance issues, and also there needs to be self-evaluation. Assuming there is a feedback that's coming where you need to correct your leadership style, be open to that. That's essential. Suppose maybe you are not being able to manage your own emotions, and that is why the trust is low. Maybe you have not been able to inculcate that in the team to trust you more. And if that's the case, have a one to one open communication and be open to feedback. And then, accordingly, if need be, change your style of leadership, adapt. That's how it is. So, assuming somebody says that, yeah, you are too much into commanding and controlling, and I just don't feel myself present there, I don't own this place, they might just give that confidence to them that I want to talk to you to benefit you. Have that kind of a communication which is very open, just like you would have with your child. That will solve that thing and bring the trust back. And
Thank you for
sorry,
this.
one thing.
Sir, again,
After you have
yeah,
heard, and if there is a challenge that is there, solve that. Means don't just hear it and don't take
yeah.
action. No, take action. So the trust is immediately built that yes, I spoke to my leader and I think he was open or she was open and solved that.
And this pointer I take from the another leader. What he used to say is, if you have a problem and you cannot solve it all at once,
Ha.
can you split it and say, if I do three things, my 20% of the job is done. I look at 80%. Now, 80% you need support from who, what. You always tell there are three things that you can do. Is one is what is that you need. You need to bucketize those three things into three pointers. One was, is it effort, is it resource, or is it an investment, money. So if three things are there, then the pointer is all are three interlinked. Now, if you say if I need an uh, amount to be sanctioned or a certain period, how much time is what is there. Now, resources. How many people do you need to get this done? To have that people, what would be the cost and what will be the time you will finish that? If you can combine these things and then come out, then you will say this is how much time that you can look at fixing this problem. So everything revolves on three aspects: cost, resource, and
Cost,
effort.
resource, and effort. Yeah.
These three things, yeah. So these are the three things that he used to tell us, saying that if you have a problem, split it into these things. Now, if you say three people are needed, who are those three people? Can you identify them? Okay. Now, when you bring those people, how many days do you need them? So you are going to get the effort there, right? Then, if you say resources are done, effort is done. Now, what would be the cost if I bring those two people, both on the resources and onto the project, if I bring them? So, if you are able to articulate that, then now on day one, you need this person who can solve 20%. Day four, you need this person who can call you 60%. So 20 plus 60 is 80%. You have another 20% to be solved. So how do you look at this? This is what was told us for us to look at when we do a project. So again, what one pointer that I want to understand is, how do you onboard a new team member remotely without losing the human connection, which is a bigger challenge that we are facing from the time
Yeah.
of COVID, right? So how do we look at
Onboarding
that?
online virtual team members is a challenge. It's something like, a daughter-in-law coming into your house. How do you onboard a daughter-in-law? I believe I love to take all these examples from real life in terms of parenting and leadership, because When a daughter-in-law comes into your house, it is the responsibility of the in-laws more to make her settle faster. So if it's a leadership team member who has onboarded or it's a trainee, it's important that we take the onus as a company to ensure that at every step the onboarding is human. It's not just filling up a form and saying, okay, fine, you are now, this is your salary and this is what your role will be. But everybody is different. So what I do to ensure that the onboarding is there, I get involved. If it is virtual, obviously it has to be somebody who will meet me first. So on day one itself, I will meet the individual who is the new joinee and explain to him the why of our business. Why do we exist? Why do we do things that we do? So for example, in our philosophy is that do something which is completely out of the box, give a different perspective to coaching. So when a client is suppose he's looking for a job and he wants to be coached for that, we have kind of changed the game by saying that resumes are not important. What is important is networking. So don't give so much importance to resume. You change that. In recruitment, you say, okay, we will commit to the client that we will present only 4 or 5 candidates, that's it, and close the position. That's a commitment. Now, why are we doing all this? Because we are quality conscious, and day one, you tell the newcomer that this is my why. As an organization, this is something which I believe in, and this is what you will. So you've aligned him to what your purpose of the company is. Second, on day one only, I tell them that see, mistakes, change the meaning of mistakes and look at them as learning. So don't worry about it if you're making mistakes. So on day one, the guys feels, I said, we will encourage you to learn from mistakes, not keep making them or repeating them, but don't worry about mistakes. So don't worry about it anytime. So that really eases the thing. Third, I have a personal philosophy which is of CANI, CANI, constant and never ending improvement. I believe in that. Anything is not perfect. So we have our coaching services, we have our recruitment, whatever we have. You are all the time ensuring that what we did last time, how can we improve that? What did we learn from the client? How can we improve that continuously? My team knows, and we continuously, sometimes you're adding a checklist, sometimes you're adding another playbook, sometimes you're adding another step in the coaching business. Constant improvement. So we tell that to the team member so that he also knows that there's nothing like perfect. So the pressure is eased. You have to constantly improve. Fourth thing that in a virtual setup I have noticed is very important. When a newcomer joins and you are asking him for, say, a client interface, make him record the mock call. That means the call that he's making or he's talking to a client on the service front, record that and send it to the team leader. The team leader listens to that call and it gives you flexibility. At the same time, it makes our job easier to listen to it and then correct and improve the person. That is something which is like in a virtual setup works extremely well. And I ensure that a newcomer who is there, initial period, I meet them once a week, one to one, till the time we feel that, and give them the confidence that you can talk to me about anything. So if the team support is there, not there for whatever reason, etc. So till the time it's maybe 2-3 months, you are hand holding the person to make him settle down. This is what we follow.
So thank you for that, sir. We are top of the hour. I will take the last question of the day because we are already on top of that. Sir, what's one lesson about virtual leadership that you would wish you know 5 years ago, sir? That's the last
Okay.
question. That
So one thing that I would have loved to know um is something, that trust is like the oxygen of virtual teams. Trust. That's the oxygen. And for that, I am responsible for my own emotional intelligence and my self reflective ability to be able to manage my emotions. Because if I don't manage my emotions, I will not be able to build that trust, which is, as I said, an oxygen for virtual teams. Without trust, no virtual teams can exist. Trust is important, otherwise, also, there is no doubt. But in virtual teams, where physically you cannot see them, there's no visibility, you will find that teams will not flourish. So, this is something which I wish I knew that point in time and I would have developed that faster. Though I'm developing and we are all humans and I continuously keep working on that. But yes, today I'm proud to say that we have a lot of trust with our teams completely, which is a big achievement.
Thank you for that, sir. Sir, I would like to take a small summary on some of the pointers that I
Sure.
had taken in this one. We started with the discussion on where your team is just a thumbnail away. So that's where we started out, and we spoke about virtual leaders must overcome some of the cultural team building pointers that we wanted to look at. We spoke about physiological safety in a high pressure environment. Then we spoke about micromanagement, which is a kind of a silent killer of innovation that we spoke about. Then we spoke about how to feel empathy while we are remote and we don't see a person on camera or a screen presence in Zoom calls and stuff like that. And we spoke on that, and we also spoke about some of the ritual or a habit you can create when the team is in remote, and that can be a really transformable pointer. That point we spoke about in detail. Then we spoke about how to measure success when we cannot see your team's work. That is one important point that we spoke, and we spoke in depth on that. Then we spoke about burnout on a 24 bar 7 connected environments. And we also spoke about one trait that is obsolete in the virtual first era. And that's where we spoke about three top skills that every leader should master and to stay relevant. And also we spoke on one pointer, which is when trust is low, how do we rebuild it faster? That's the point that we spoke. And then the last pointer that we spoke about, how you can have one lesson on a virtual leadership you wish to know in if you had known 5 years ago. So that's the pointers that we discussed in a 1 hour long session. We are 4 minutes on top of the schedule today, and as the conversation was interesting and we went on board, and there's one question before we conclude, is one question which has come up. I
Sure.
would like to bring that here, sir. Sridhar Bhatt is one person who's got a very good podcast. This is so-called leadership aspirant should listen. Well explained to Saprajit sir. The question is also covered in various scenarios. And we have another coming up, which is thanks for being here. Gratitude to all faster watchers. Room is Praveen is given that pointer, sir. With this, thank you, Praveen. Thank you, Sridhar. Thank you for those comments, and thank you for joining us today. Sir, with this, we have done with the session. If you have any last minute words or pointers that you want to give it out before we conclude.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Prem. I'm honored to be on the show and I really enjoyed it because I'm passionate about leadership and I love doing that. And thanks for that. And only one thing before we go is that we got to, as leaders, we got to shift our mindset from managing results to managing humans. That's important. Just shift your mindset from managing results to managing humans. The moment we start leading with the heart, results will come. That's my belief. That's all I would leave.
Absolutely, sir. I would take that because to say Power of Knowing Forum has been doing this episodes for the last 1.5 year. We had, I will say on my behalf, is that I've got the best of best leaders who have come and spoke about most of the topics, and it's been a great learning. And the results are showing up now that people want to listen to our podcast. They want to be part of our podcast, and it is really helping us to have leaders bring up and talk on most of the pointers. Absolutely, what if you start doing what you love? I think the results will come.
Absolutely. I
That's what
wish
I
you all
would
the best
also
on
like.
this. You're doing a great job.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. For the listeners, please do follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook because this is streamed across all these platforms. Hope you found this discussion valuable and thank you for joining. Our next podcast is the 247th episode where we're talking about cybersecurity and GCC model, where we are going to see how GCC model is going to have the future of global security. Unlocking the power of GCC model is what we're talking on the 13th May at 6:30 p.m. Looking forward to see you. Good day and bye, sir. Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Prem.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here. And
Thank
with
you.
this, I would like
Thank you.
thank you. Would like to conclude this.